Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AI Math Guy podcast, where superintendents reimagine education in the age of AI. I'm Jae Kim. I'm a math teacher, an AI practitioner, and the co founder of Someta. Today's episode is very personal for me. My guest today is the superintendent of the school district that I proudly teach in, the Anaheim Union High School District. He's been in this district for 29 years. He graduated from Catella High School, one of its own. His father was a teacher and an administrator here. He spearheaded and helped lead the development and the implementation of the Career Preparedness Systems Framework and the Capstone program that defines what AUHSD students graduate with. And it was work that everybody contributed, the principals and the assistant principals, and it really took a village to make that happen. And on December 30th of last year, he became the superintendent, the successor to Michael Matsuda, who was on this very podcast not long ago. I'm honored to have my superintendent, Dr. Jaron, on the show. Welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you, Jay. I look forward to the conversation this afternoon.
Absolutely. I just described your history of the time that you spent at the school district. I know you were also a special education teacher and different roles in the school district. Is there one that you really want to highlight that you're like, wow, that was really good work, or that was something that really stands out to me throughout my years serving at AUHSD? Any particular role that stands out to you?
There are a few things, Jay. I was not only an educator in our district, but I was a student in our district. I went to our
Mm,
schools. And I think as I hear you ask me that question, I think what stands out the most, I'm proud of the work that I've been able to do and been a part of in all the roles that I've served, both teacher and as a site and district level administrator. But I think the one that's probably most enduring to me is probably when I was a teacher,
mm,
especially now having the privilege and the opportunity to serve as a superintendent. But I'm able to think a lot about the work that I get to do and lead and be a part of now. It's been shaped so much by my experience as a classroom teacher because to me, that's all. Listen, a car doesn't run without an engine, but it also needs a steering wheel, it needs gas pedals and a brake, it needs a shell, right? All those things are equally important because the car doesn't work without all those parts coming together to work. Although I can say the teacher is essential, I think so too are the classified staff, the front office staff, the counselors, the admin. It takes all those different roles to make a school really operate and serve students in our community. But yeah, the teacher role is by far is one that's special, especially as I think about to my career, because what happens in the classroom is so delicate, so essential, and that's really where the impact is truly made on a student to help them find their own passion, their own purpose, their own identity, and ultimately how they want to make the world a better place. So yeah, the teacher role by far, as I heard you ask me that question, probably is what's resonating the most with me. But I want to be clear, all positions that I've held in this district hold a special place in my heart, and I have been super proud of the work that been able to do as a part of those roles, for
wow,
sure.
that's awesome. Yeah, every role in the school district, classified, certificated, district, or a curriculum special, all of those roles are so important. And for you, teacher stands out to you particularly. And I'm curious, and I know because you're a teacher yourself, how does I think having been a teacher and going through the I forgot going through the work, right? Of being a teacher and teaching and leading a classroom, how does that shape your superintendency and how you lead the school district?
So to give a little bit more context about my teaching assignment, I was a special ed teacher. I was a reading specialist, really a
Mm,
literacy specialist. Worked with students with disabilities at the high school level, so grades 9 through 12. And many of my students that I served came to my classroom reading at the second, third grade level. Yet they were 17 years old. My students, for the most part, had a mental model of themselves that I can't do good at math. I'm not a reader. I'm stupid. They've been told their whole life they're not good or they're not good enough. School had not worked for them. For the most part, they had failed a good chunk of their life, which is how they ended up being placed in special education because the general ed classes weren't supporting their needs.
mm,
And so for me, that has profoundly impacted the way I have worked not just as a teacher, but as an administrator, and in particular as my role as assistant superintendent services, and then now as the superintendent. When I say it sounds cliche or hokey and that all kids can learn, I really do believe all kids can learn. I believe that the students I was serving just learn differently. Like they're just as brilliant as any other student that touched our schools. They just saw math and saw English through a different lens, right? Whether it was they had dyslexia or some other type of maybe disability, it did not take away from their brilliance. They just saw and learned differently. And so for me as a teacher, what was just as important as the content I was teaching, it was about the skills that I was building in our students. It was about this hope, this idea of hope, and this belief that, you know what, I can do it. I can learn. I can be successful. And so I saw myself just as much a cheerleader and a motivator as I was a teacher. Right. And I was also a coach. So for context, I was a football and wrestling coach and tennis coach. And so coaches are great motivators. They inspire. Yes, they teach the skills, whether it's the athletic skills to their athletes, but it's inspiring and hey, we can do this. And don't worry about our opponent. We focus on executing our game plan. And if we worry about executing what we can do and what we're in control of, it's going to be just fine. Right. And so I try to instill that kind of spirit, that mindset into the classroom. I was when I say I was able, it was really our kids were able to do amazing things because I was able to create a condition where they saw and believed in themselves and each other. And our classroom was a family, right? One kid fails, we all fail. And so how do we support each other in being successful? And when I was teaching, this is at the early stages of the IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Act, right? And so in our district at that time, inclusion was not a big full-blown thing yet. We like as an RSB teacher, which now is an ed specialist, I had kids in my own classroom, so it was still a self-contained classroom. They weren't mainstreamed into general ed classes. So when I started teaching, I was one of the first who started pushing my kids out into gen ed classes in the district. As a result, I started getting a lot of the high profile cases across our district in my classroom. So there weren't very many IEPs that I attended where there weren't advocates and attorneys at because I had all the not all, but I had many of the high profile cases. And I was able to get our kids to a place where I told you they were coming into the second, third grade level. They were leaving my class each year at the fifth, sixth grade level. So they were growing 3 to 4 grade levels every year they were with me. And it wasn't that I was this amazing teacher. I don't take credit for being this amazing teacher. I really wasn't. I was just kind of a regular teacher like everyone else. But I did have the ability to inspire. I did have the ability to motivate. And I did have the ability to create a condition in my class where their kids saw and believed in hey, we were in this together and we're a family. And I think because of the program that I was leading and what we were doing, we were able to accomplish amazing things. And again, it wasn't the kids did it. The kids did the work. I just created the conditions for them to do that work. And so that has inspired a lot of the work that I've been able to lead over the years in my district leadership positions as an assistant soup, and as now I'm a superintendent. I try to even lead that way when I was a principal, right, as a site administrator. And I mean, I'm really proud of the work that we've been able to do, but make no mistake, the kids did the work. Like they did the heavy load, the heavy lift. I just created the conditions for them to thrive. And so I'm trying to do the same in my role. And hopefully you felt that through the work that I've done as assistant soup, right? I know I'm only a few months in to my superintendency, but that's the kind of conditions we're trying to create so the capstone can become real. So the CPSF can be real. So the skills, the 5 Cs can be real, right? And those are things that we can and we have been able to do across our district, across all of our schools. And it hasn't been this top down, you will do. It's been something that hopefully we've been able to inspire where we have this critical mass across our district that has made this complete transformation in terms of how school and ought to be in AUHSD. I'm not saying other districts are doing it wrong. I'm just saying we have found a way to really transform education where it's worked for us and our community. And I really do feel like what I've was able to learn from my students and what they taught me is what I've been able to kind of incorporate or embed into what I've been able to do as a leader now in all the roles that I've had up until now. And so, yeah, my students, I put them against anyone. They were brilliant in their own way, but unfortunately, the world had taught them that they were less than because of all their lived experience. Until they at least had me, where I was able to get them to see themselves through a different light.
Oh, I think the insight that I am gleaning from what you're sharing and very glad is that as you being my superintendent is just your heart and your why for why you're in education. And I'm not 100% sure. I'm still learning like how all the superintendents get to superintendency. And I know not everybody goes from a teacher into to superintendent. And I think I really appreciate what you just shared because it reveals your heart. It reveals your motivation behind why you got into education, which is to get the kids who might be marginalized and dismissed. And really, I feel like the best educators are those who got into education because of those reasons. They see potential in the kid where nobody might see. And they're like, no, I know that this kid can do it. It might just take different approaches, they might have different learning styles, but I know that this kid can learn and can accomplish great things. And
Well, and
so,
I think that same mindset applies to our staff, right? Just like the teacher is always trying to look for the assets and the best in the students that they serve. Think about the school principal. They need to do the same thing with their staff, right? Someone hired every teacher. Every teacher was hired by someone. Someone saw something in that teacher or that classified staff or that counselor that made them feel like this is who I want to be on this staff. And so how do we as a site leader capture that same spirit and that belief that you are destined to be great and you can do amazing things to impact kids. It's helping them find their why, helping them find their strengths, their assets to be leveraged to create that same impact. Just like a good teacher differentiates for their students, a principal has to differentiate for their staff, right? Not all teachers learn the same. Not all counselors or admin learn. You have to be able to scaffold and differentiate to help your entire team move along the way. And as a superintendent, it's the same thing I do with our ed staff, business staff, HR staff, and our site leaders, right? I have to be able to differentiate and see each person for who they are and not the like we're all cut from the same cloth, right? We're all different. And how do we leverage each other's assets and strengths to create this beautiful puzzle that's going to create this artwork that's just something to be in awe of later on, which is really our charge as educators to create this environment where our students thrive. But we have to create the conditions for ourselves first to be able to do that work, which is a calling, right? And yeah, it's something I've learned along the way. It's something I'm still working on. I would not tell you for any I'm not perfect. Like I still have a lot of growth and a lot of things that I'm personally working on to improve upon, but that's the art. It's how
yeah,
you serve those that you lead. And it's not just the students and families. They're obviously a massive part of who you serve and lead, but it's also in my case now the staff. Right. I used to tell our principals a happy, healthy teacher can produce a happy, healthy student. And when a teacher is miserable, I can't imagine what the classroom environment is really going to be like. So, how do we create the conditions where you can support our staff to be able to do their work?
yeah.
And it just keeps trickling down. So the same thing, how does the teacher create the conditions so the students can be successful and be happy and healthy in their environment? Yeah, it's something I'm proud of. It's something I'm constantly working on because our players are constantly changing and the world is sometimes cruel and sometimes divisive and how we support our people because life, they're not exempt from life. Life happens to all of us, right? We all experience aspects of death, tragedy, but we also experience happiness and joy. And how do we create the conditions to support our people through life? Right? And that's the challenge, right? And that's the artwork in terms of how we come to work every day and show up for those that we serve and support them along the way and tease out those assets and those strengths so they find joy in what they do and they're supported to do the work they do in a healthy and productive and meaningful way.
I love that framing because the heart and the why that led you to be a teacher, which is to inspire others to see the good and the assets in people and really bringing that potential out of them and seeing them do really cool things with it and good things with it that carried over to just every role, right? Whether you are a principal or a district personnel or now the superintendent, it seems like at the core of it all is you want to see the potential of people being brought out and maximized. And I personally have felt that because of my principal, Elda Vasquez. Like,
Yeah, she's amazing.
she really is somebody who has seen like greatness in me and many times where I could not have seen it myself. And I'm sure that she is able to create that kind of environment because she's experienced that from the leadership as well, just being able to see, be herself, be seen, hey, you have assets and you could do amazing things. And because of that, now I get to be the recipient of that, which I'm just really, really blessed. And I think it reassures. I know this is not just for AUHSD people, everybody who's
Right.
listening, is that I think it's like so reassuring as a teacher to know that the leader who is leading our school district, the foundation or his big why is that, which is to bring out the potential in others. So thank you for sharing that, Dr. Freed.
I appreciate that, Jay.
My next question is in terms of, I guess, right now, as you are leading as the superintendent and the world is changing as there's AI happening and lots of things happening over here and the world is changing so fast. And as a superintendent and now leading AUHSD, which also I do want to point out later on, is that you one thing that I really appreciate is that you always point to other people. Like, hey, this is where the work is happening. Even when you're talking about your kid, the people who did the work are the kids, and they are the ones who did really amazing things. And I love that because I know I'm like sharing a lot here. Is I
I
just got
appreciate it.
into a podcast with Dr. Asrani, who is she like trains superintendents and works with USC Rossier of
Okay.
Education,
Mhm.
and that's like what she talked about. She said that what makes a good superintendent is somebody who points to other successes and recognizes for the work that they do, and that's what I observe in you. But anyways, that's a side point.
Thank you. Go on.
Yeah, I know. And
Appreciate that.
yeah, of course. And I think, yeah, so the world is changing, right? The world is changing so much. So how do you see AUHSD or how do you see your role as the superintendent help just the district, our teachers and our students prepare ourselves for this upcoming world? What do you think is like the most important thing that we need to think about and be focusing on?
Gosh, I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm thinking about. I'll try to be succinct, but I mean, I think first and foremost, you're right. The world is changing. The world of work is changing. Our world is more divisive than ever before, and I'm not saying that to be political in this piece whatsoever. But I think we can see that you and I used to be able to disagree, and we could still be friends. You don't see that today. You see, if you see things differently than me, then we're not talking, and that's really unfortunate. So I think about a question we asked our families and our communities a number of years ago, which is, hey, what is the purpose of K-12 school and what are we preparing our kids for? Right. And then what do we want them to be able to do and be like when they leave us? Right. And so for me, there's a couple things. First, I go back to our vision that the community really helped draft or create a better world through the unlimited you, right? And it goes back to what we just talked about a few minutes ago, right? We want every single person, not just our students, but our staff, our families, parents, caregivers. And when I say staff, classified and certificated alike, whether you're a bus driver, custodial staff, to a principal, it doesn't matter. I want everyone to be able to be the best version of themselves. And I think for us, our charge as a school community and as a superintendent is to set the condition and the vision that our job as educators and as a community, right? We're a community school district, right? Where it's not just our charge, it's all of us coming together to wrap a blanket around our kids to help protect them and keep them, give them the skills and the attributes and the content, all the things that they're going to need to be successful when they leave us. So for me, right, I'm thinking about a number of things. I want, first and foremost, our kids to be able to leave us just kind and compassionate. I want them to feel a sense of responsibility to help make the world better, which is what our vision talks about. It's what our families have asked for. It's what our students ask for. It's what our staff asks for. If they feel compelled to leave us in wanting to make the world, whether it's their local world or the larger global world, better, that's a victory for us. And that speaks to the work that we're doing with civic education, right? That students are getting involved in whether it be small things or big things, something that they care about, their passion to make whatever that topic ratio is better, right? I think about the skills that are needed for the world of work. You're right, the world is changing where the content that we all used to have to memorize, you think about it as your experience probably growing up with math, right? We memorize lots of equations and formulas and now it is all on our phone. It's with AI. It's we don't have to memorize our timetables like we used to. Now, more important is how we take our students and we teach them the skills to apply content, to take the content through different circumstances or scenarios and figure out how to apply it in a way that's useful, meaningful for whatever the task at hand is, but also going back to our vision to help make the world a better place, right? To use it for good. Like for me, those are super important priorities, and those of course are connected when we say our skills, the 5 C's, our CPSF that we refer to, our Career Preparedness Systems Framework, because part of our charge as a district is to prepare our kids for what is next, which is hopefully living and leading fulfilling and meaningful lives, which includes, right, being able to live in a way where they can afford, right, the luxuries of life, to be able to have food on the table every night, a shelter over their head. So of course we want them to be able to be employed. And to keep that job means they have to have a set of skills, right? Those are our 5 C's. It's the technical skills. Well, that's the work that we're doing with our pathways, right? That's also the content knowledge. That's our dual enrollment programs, our Google certification, all those things. And then of course it's grounded in who they are as people. That's the voice, the purpose, the identity work. So for me, those are things that I think are essential as a school district that we need to be focused on in preparing our students, because if we continue to do what many districts still do, which is a very narrow perspective, the memorizing of dates, equations, right, and formulas, the regurgitation of those facts, we are actually widening the gap for our students. And given that we serve a large population who are living in poverty and who are often marginalized or furthest from opportunity, shame on us if we continue to focus on a traditional approach, because then we're actually creating more inequities for them as they leave us. And so I'm super proud of our district and our board, the work that I've been privileged to have been a part of the last 12 plus years. That whole child approach, community centered approach that's grounded in civic ed, but it's also grounded in that whole child skill development that prepares them for the world of work. I think that is our charge. If we can do that work, we are preparing our students to be successful no matter what curveballs life throws at them, no matter how jobs continue to evolve. Our kids are going to be fine, right? Our students are going to be just fine. And again, what I opened up this question with, at the end of the day, if we can do all that through the lens of that 5th C, that compassion and that kindness, that character, to do
Mm.
good with what we're teaching them to help make the world or their world, right? Whether it's their local context or a larger context better, then we have done our job. We have done our part to also, as an institution, help make this world a better place. And I always say, well, we're one district, CVA, and I'm representing it. I don't know if you noticed that.
Whoop,
We're
whoop.
one school, right? I always say, and it sounds like a joke when I say it, but it's true. If you think you're too small to make a difference, or we're just one district, what difference can we really make? I always joke and say, but if you think you're too small to make a difference, you've never spent the night with a mosquito. The point being, like, we can make a difference. Like, we can focus on AUHSD being the model, and then just continue to model great work and impact our students in ways where education really is working with them, right, to prepare them for something bigger. Rest assured, it's like throwing that pebble in the pond. You see the ripples. We will see a ripple effect. It will spread and have impact in ways that right now we may not be fully able to appreciate or imagine, but we will make a difference. It will, without any uncertainty in my mind, we will make a difference and impact much greater than AUHSD. Even though our focus may be on AUHSD and focusing on our students and our own staff, we will make an impact and an impression on this world. So that's for me as a superintendent, and even previous as the assistant superintendent, that is the charge. That whole child civic-minded approach to prepare kids for what world they're going to inherit. I know we're talking about AI, but I think this connects to AI as well. Our job is to prepare our kids for the world they are entering, not the world we grew up in,
Mm.
right? And the world is changing, and shame on us if we prepare them for what we were being prepared for, because that is not the world our kids are going to inherit. They are going to inherit a world where AI is norm. That is normalized. They're going to grow up in a world where they may not have one job over the course of their lifetime. They may have multiple jobs, because that's just the nature of how work is evolving. And that's okay. But if we don't prepare them for that world, shame on us. And that is fully within our control. The state gives us a framework, but how we teach that framework is on us. And that's where I'm so grateful to the work that our teachers, our staff, our board, our community has really rallied around that whole child approach, because we are preparing our students, I believe, for that kind of world that is very different than what you and I grew up in. And that's the right thing to do, because the world they're going to inherit is very different than the world you and I inherited.
Yeah.
And when we're senior citizens someday, if we do our job correctly, we're gonna go into the senior citizen world, right, as elders, knowing that we're in good hands, that our
Yeah.
kids are going to do right by us as we're older. So that's why it's just cyclical, right? We just have to continuously think about the world that's evolving and make sure we're preparing our kids for that world.
Mm. Wow, that's good. I love the mosquito
Yeah,
analogy. You're
for me
right.
it's
Like,
a joke, it is
it's
though.
so good, right? It's like you have one mosquito, so small, but when it bites you, like it ruins your whole day. All right. So that was a
It
really
leaves it,
powerful,
or it leaves an impression.
leaves
It
an
leaves an
impression
impression.
for
It
sure.
makes an impact.
Makes an impact. No, for sure. Wow, that's very interesting. And I love what you shared also about we have to prepare kids for the world that they will live in, not the world that we grew up in. That's a quote right there. And just that whole child approach of that fifth C that you're talking about, that character and compassion, and also then having the necessary skills to be able to act upon that compassion and character to do good and to make an impact. So I thought that was really, really awesome. I have two questions, but I think I'm just going to cut it to one because it's already 27 minutes here. But if you can just share one word of encouragement to just our listeners, whether it's superintendents or whether it's teachers, students, if you could just share one word of encouragement to the listeners from perspective now as a superintendent, what would be that one word of encouragement?
I don't know if it's one word, but I think about my own kids, right? My own kids. I have a son who's a sophomore at UC Riverside, and my daughter's a senior. Hard to believe. A few more months, she'll be a graduate at UC Davis.
Mm,
And I focus on them. I instill in them. There's two things to not stress about things that you cannot control. Focus on what's within your control, right? And for me, I tell them there's two things that you're in control of: your attitude and your effort. You have full control over those two things. You sit in traffic and you can hate it, but hating it is a choice. You can put on good music and now it's not so bad. It's a choice, right? That's your attitude. You control how hard you try, right? And so for me, I think about, and I know this is for students and superintendents, but I think about the state of urgency that we're in as just schools, and we're at a critical juncture, right, with our students and with the world they're going to inherit that we talked about. And so for me, there's a state of urgency, but those are the two things that I would instill: is that attitude and effort, the two things in your control. And for us as educators, right? So if I'm speaking to educators,
mm,
for me, it's a plea that the status quo is one of the worst things that we can latch onto. Because if we latch onto the status quo, we are doing a disservice to the students that we serve.
mm,
And so it's a plea to think through the lens of urgency, that we have to think about how schools really need to transform and move away from that, as Linda Darling Hellman talks about, that factory model, to these now environments where there's flexibility and there's curiosity. Hilda, your amazing principal, she reminds us all the time: approach questions with curiosity and not judgment, right? Kind of like the Ted Lasso quote. It's true, wonder. How can we create our school environments as places of wonder, places of curiosity? Because the world is going to need more of that and less of the rote memorization. And so for educators, it's that sense of urgency and a plea to think open and creatively about how we need to flip education upside down and really tear down the traditional approaches and think about a new approach that's going to really prepare kids for what they're going to inherit. And for our students and young people that are in education, I think it's really easy to get fixated on what all the things that happen in the world that they really have not a lot of control over. And the two things within their control is attitude and effort. And if they can really focus on hone on those two things, then all the other things are going to become more possible. Going back to the special ed teacher story that I had shared with the students that I served, okay, you were born with a learning disability. Can't do anything about that. That's what you were given when you were born. Okay, but you can control your attitude and the effort you put in and how you work to address it. And those are the kinds of things that helped the students that I was serving get beyond this mental model that I can't. I have a reading disability. I can't do math. I have dysgraphia or whatever it was. Right, like that became a barrier that just gave them an excuse to not do better. And I think the attitude and effort, we can do something that's fully within our control.
mm.
And I think if we can motivate and get people inspired that, hey, those are the two things. If you get those two things right, you're going to be amazing. I talked about this earlier. John Wooden, basketball coach at UCLA, right? He's famous for lots of things, but the thing that to me that I think I took most is when he did his lesson design or game plan for his UCLA team. He wasn't worried about who they were competing against. Didn't matter. Yeah, he might. Remember, that time they didn't have AI. They didn't have the videos to do the scouting that we do now. So his focus was on, you know what, guys, we just need to focus on us. We can control us. We have a game plan. And if we can execute this game plan to the best of our ability, I'm confident we're going to win games. And sure enough, UCLA had dominance over the decade that he was coaching. And it wasn't that he was this amazing, amazing coach who had the best scouting but he got his guys to believe into this Two things: our attitude and our effort. We're going to execute our game plan to the best of our ability. And when things happen in the lost game, how we respond, how we're flexible, our attitude about it, that's going to be all the difference. And it's a proven track record. Look what they did year after year, all those national championships. And it wasn't rocket science when you looked at his game plan, but he got his players to believe in that mindset. And so for me, I think it's similar. All of our schools across the nation are teaching content. What makes AUHSD different? It's going to be our approach. Right. We're going to approach it with a we can do it. We're going to approach it with a whole child approach, skill based, civic based, with an attitude and a belief that we can be kind and we can make the world better. And I think for us, that's transforming schools in and of itself, because we could game the system like every other district who wants to, right? We can prepare kids to do well on one test, because we know that if you ask this question a bunch on the test and we spend this much time teaching it, yeah, our kids will do well on it. What does that test prepare them for? I'm not so sure yet, right? So I think if we do things with good intention and we really focus on the right drivers and we do it in the way that I just kind of described, there's nothing that our students and our families and our community can't accomplish, and there's nothing that our staff can't do. I would take our staff against any staff across any district in this country. I would put our folks up against anyone, and I'm confident we can prevail in any single situation you put us in, because I think more and more of our folks are embracing that kind of a mindset.
Wow, that's good. Effort and attitude. Those are the two things that you can control. And as you were sharing, I was reflecting on my own life. It's like, what are the things that I'm worrying about right now that I just don't have any control over? And I think that's a very powerful piece of advice for anybody in education to leave with, whether student, principal, and to focus on what you can control. Thank you so much, Dr. Freed, for just taking the time to get on the podcast. I just appreciate your work, and just I'm so excited to see all the work and the good things that has already been done and that you will continue to do. So everyone, thank you for listening. That was another wrap on the episode on the AI Math Guy podcast. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.